So your utility boards will come in a box that looks like this, and when you open it up you will find a little bit of bubble wrap and an anti-static bag. That's a mouthful. Save the box, unbag the board, and you will find in the bag a wrapped up relay. Plug the relay in. It has a screw that goes in the round hole. Support it nicely on the back as you're pushing it in. It'll put little holes in your fingers, but that's all right. Oh, that one used to fit in there. There we go. So there's the relay plugged in. That is the shutter relay, so that replaces the external relay which we have had in the past on these boards. And you're ready to put it in. And it's just the reverse procedure. Pick 2 or more holes where you want to put the 4mm screws. Choose ones you can get to. You might want to plug this in first. It's a little hard to get to it sometimes. Make sure the clips are holding it down. That was the digital connect cable. And then with your head over there, you make sure you're engaging the 50-pin connector down there to the capacitor board. Give it a little push. And tighten the screws. Thusly, connect up your front panel cable, which is this funky one with all sorts of stuff hanging off it.
These large 64-pin connectors are keyed. There's a center key that allows them to only go in one orientation.
Right there. And you see there's a slot down here and no slot on the other side. So that actually, that's why I've been kind of casual about that. Doesn't matter, you can't do it wrong. Well, you could, but you shouldn't. This guy, our standard RTD convention is you put that on anyway. It doesn't matter. For any one of the 4 positions, it works the same. The magic of crossing. Okay, now the next thing is to connect up the RTDs that were connected. And so there is 4 and 3, and in a box this will be a little easier to do because they're tied down. But this J30 is still in the same position as the old one, so they should be just right. There is number 1 that I pushed on the first 4 pins, and number 2 that I push on the next 4 pins. And guess what? Number 3 goes on the next 4 pins. And number 4 goes on the next 4 pins. And if you have other RTDs, you can connect them here and you can change the program and read those as well. So, and then the last thing is the magic blue cable. Actually, it's not the last thing, but the next thing is the magic blue cable, which goes on there. And you'll notice that this board is taller and has extra connectors on it and has the relay on it. And those are the main differences between the Rev 1 and Rev 2. There are actually other details that are quite a bit better on this board, but that's the main difference. And these 2 connectors here are what are required for the bog heaters. And so at some point we're going to tell you all about hooking up a bog heater, and that uses a bog heater cable, which I just happen to have here. And unfortunately, these connectors got on here without the nice housing, and so you have to put them on the right way. There's a white mark which shows where pin 1 is, and that's pin 1. So I'm about to connect the bog heater cable to J6. And in addition, on the same cable, you will find a sensor that looks a lot like this. The sensor that you get will be coated, conformally coated with RTV. And as part of the installation of the bog heater cable inside the HE, you have to pull this guy through a hole on the front panel and have it hang out, because that's the ambient temperature sensor. The bog heaters, as you may know, can servo the temperature of the return lines either to ambient temperature up at where the HE is, or to the dew point as measured by the sensor in the equipment room. You select which of those it's going to do with this little jumper there. There's dew point down on the bottom and ambient temperature up here on the top, I think. We may have to correct that when we do the installation of this cable, installation of the whole bog heater system, in fact. Okay, so that you're done. Once you've done that, you've changed the board to the new one. The firmware's all pre-programmed, all ready to go. Got a serial number there. You might want to note which one you actually install. There should go 2 to each site. And Dan will tell you all about making the changes in this cable so that you get to use the relay on the board. It's something we might, a separate thing we might write up for people. Now, there's one other part, actually 2 other parts that are being supplied to you, and they are to be able to get this board into a position where you can actually work on it if you have to. So let me just show how you do that while we're here. You undo those screws that you just tightened up. Once again, don't throw them away because you will need them. And you back the board out. And I think probably this guy will not be long enough, so you want to unplug that. Everything else should be long enough. Except that somebody's standing on the cable over here. There we go. And then you should have at each site a little block that looks like this.
Hold that block up, Bruce. I can see it. Okay.
A little block that looks like that. The ones you have at the site don't have this extra row of holes. That was a freebie that the machinist put in for us that we didn't need. And you attach that block in place of the utility board. Actually, 2 screws here is plenty again, but we'll be super careful and use them all. And again, you can't have screws that stick out too much there because you will potentially damage the cold plate. Then the utility board then attaches to the edge of this test bracket. You don't need to go crazy again, a couple of screws and get them a little snug so that you're conducting the heat from this heat sink strip into the place where it's supposed to go. And all your cables are still connected with the exception of the blue cable for all the RTDs inside the doer. If you need that, you would have to loosen the clamp over there and get a little more length on that. Some installations that may be long enough and some it may not be. And then you have connected this to everything in the box with the exception of the 50-pin connector on the capacitor board. And this connector carries power for this board and a lot of signals for the raw voltages so that you can measure the raw voltages. And we have made up this little extension cable, which plugs into with paddles on it, which plugs in there, and you plug the other end in here, and then you got to get that right. Female on the bottom, I did have it right. And you can't go wrong. Either end, if it goes in, it's good. So then you have the board is electrically connected and it's accessible if you need to test probe or look at it or deal with it in any way, shape, or form. When you're done, take the test cable out. Take the 2 screws out that attach it to the test bracket. Nothing like watching paint dry. And you can put the board back in its correct position, getting it lined up with the 50-pin connector. Make sure nothing's gotten pinched. Putting it in, no wires underneath it. That's good. You may have to wiggle it back and forth a little to find the screw hole. You're done.